Welcome to the Leader Post Rider Rumblings podcast, episode number 153. Taylor Shire and Darrell Davis back with another episode of the podcast as we discuss the Saskatchewan Roughriders officially clinching a playoff berth. About a month ago, Darrell, I didn't know if we would be talking about this, but yes, Saskatchewan will be in the postseason for the first time since 2021 after a 28-24 win over the Elks on the weekend.
Yeah, about four or five podcasts ago, maybe 5 or 6, I guess, Taylor, we were going, oh my goodness, what's happening to these guys? Remember those conversations? I'm thinking, are they any good? Well, and we kind of figured that, you know what, they just weren't getting things going in their favor. And it seems like suddenly through the 3-game winning streak, things are starting to turn for them. And I can't imagine any more better examples than what happened to them against Edmonton. CJ Reeves throwing a punch, not getting thrown out. 2 fumbles get whistled down early. Then the Roughriders don't lose them because of that. 2 command center rulings go in the favor of the Roughriders. A big play by Roland Milligan Jr., a big play by Amari Henderson, the defensive plays, that the things they were getting early in the season, but not getting in the middle season. So they are now a good team on the rebound. And as you say, they clinched a spot. They're a better team now.
Yeah, I mean, you referenced all of those plays, and those are every single break and every single bounce went their way on Saturday, and really nothing overly went against them. And still they didn't win decisively. They won, obviously. It went down to the fourth quarter. They still picked up the win, but it wasn't like, okay, we're here to clinch a playoff spot type of win where they go out and dominate. Obviously they got the win, and that's reason enough to be happy if you're a Rider fan, but I feel like the defense kind of, as much as they forced those turnovers, they were giving up quite a bit. And I don't know if that's going to go, if a defense like that is going to go well against a good Nathan Rourke and a Zach Caleros come playoff time.
Yeah, you're right. The defense was only, they came up with big plays, but they're not the dominant defense anymore. They did try one thing. You could tell, couldn't you, Taylor, that they were trying to stop the run because Edmonton had run so effectively against them in that the only real blowout the Riders suffered was that game in Edmonton, and they were making sure that it wasn't going to happen to them again. So they played that way, gave up some yardage, but didn't give up a whole lot of touchdowns.
Yeah, and on the other side, Trevor Harris, I think, had one of his better games aside from 2 picks. He threw those 2 interceptions, just trying to force something and just trying to make a play, but I think he had 358 with 2 touchdowns, including, I think, what was one of his best throws to Sam Emelis for the touchdown. He also hit Keyshawn Johnson, who made an unbelievable catch for the touchdown. But I think the biggest thing for me was the response, because Edmonton scored and then the Riders immediately had a response. And we didn't see that a lot throughout the season where Saskatchewan would respond immediately. Oftentimes they were throwing the first punch and then letting the other team go down and score. But this time it was sort of Saskatchewan responding. And I think that drive when Harris hit MLS, I believe 88 yards was, I think to me, it said like, okay, this team's here to fight and here to get into the playoffs.
You're right. They scrambled right back into it afterwards, didn't they? And they hadn't been doing that during their winless skid, that they just didn't seem to respond. And this time they did. Not that their offense was outstanding. They still need to get that running attack going. It seems like only Raquel Armstead can get it going, and he's hurt for who knows how long. But other than that, the offense was just okay. You're right about that perfect throw to Emelis, and Johnson made it was a good throw, but a great catch by Johnson. So they're scoring when they have to. It looks like their kicker's back on track. Brett Lother's back on track. 21 of 22, his last 22. So they have a lot of things going for them. They're getting the big plays out of the defense. So the little things that happen, but you're right. You can say the offense wasn't great. 358 yards is a pretty good number through the air, though. But the response was huge both times.
Yeah. So is it time to celebrate? I know, getting into the playoffs is exciting for the fan base, but 6 of the 9 teams in the league get into the playoffs. It's not like the Major League Baseball when if you clinch a wild card spot, you're going to have a massive party in your locker room.
Don't talk to me about Major League Baseball.
Well, yeah, I don't want to bring up the Brewers.
The Brewers are out, man. What a crusher that was.
Up the Brewers. But I don't even agree with how baseball teams celebrate getting into the playoffs. I mean, you haven't won anything yet. Sure, you got in and pat yourself on the back, but I don't think the Riders are celebrating as a team quite yet, and a lot of their post game celebration or post game comments were that enjoy it for an hour or two, but it's time to get on to BC. So as a fan base though, or as a team, do you think it's something to sort of celebrate already?
It's something to acknowledge for sure. It is, right. You're right. 66.7% of the teams in this league make it, and 3 out of the 5 in the West make it. How strange is it for Calgary and Edmonton to not be in the playoffs? They both get eliminated. What a strange way that was. That they both get eliminated. BC and Saskatchewan clinch with the Roughriders victory. So it's wild how that worked. Yes, it's a big enough deal, right? Because how much have they been criticized for the last 2 years for not making the playoffs? So they've escaped that criticism. As we said 6 weeks ago, if we were talking on this podcast, we were wondering, what's wrong with this football team? Are they ever getting heat? And it was so easy to pick little things apart on them. Now you say, okay, well, there's some little things that they could still work on, but they're winning football games and making the playoffs. Trevor Harris did acknowledge it. So did a lot of the players. Sure, it's great, but that's not near what they're looking for. They want way more success than what they've gotten, but it's the first step towards at least getting maybe into the Grey Cup, maybe getting to the Grey Cup and winning it. They're certainly a contender now, and I think that's something they can celebrate.
Yeah, they are back to being a contender. I will agree with that. And if you sort of take a wide angle and a look back, if you go to right when Corey Mace was hired, you would say, okay, the expectation of a rookie head coach would be to make the playoffs if you're a fan of this team. So they've succeeded that. So if they manage to do nothing in the playoffs, you can still sort of look back and say, okay, they took a step forward. How can they then take a step forward in year 2 next year? And then, are they a contender in year 3? Can they win a title in year 3? In the CFL, I've never really bought into the rebuild, the sort of 3-year progression. I think it's a win now league every year. And you've written about that before too, right? And Montreal proved it last year, right? You can put together a staff and a brand new team and win on any given year.
Yeah, the CFL is always the future is now, right? Because you're bringing in new Americans. The free agency rules allow players to leave without compensation at any time, and they're signing 1-year contracts now. So it's very difficult to build a long-term contender in the CFL. You have to do it year by year. You have to have your team, your ducks in a row every single year. The fact that the first-year head coach, despite that 7-game winless skid, and maybe that's what we should give him more credit for that too, Taylor. When you hear Trevor Harris, he said the same thing. We're the outside noise, right? The media, the fans are the outside noise that he was referring to. They know that that's going on when that team is losing 7. But you and I are close enough to the team. We at least watch them and interview them, and we interact with them a fair bit. Not that they tell us all their secrets, but we're close enough that we see how they react. And you could tell that there was never that division, that bickering, that disenchantment with anybody on the squad, on the other side. The offense didn't dislike the defense, and the defense didn't like the offense. They weren't mad at each other. So let's give Corey Mace credit for that, for holding that team together. The players obviously deserve a lot of credit too, but the way that they dealt with it and rebounded, you couldn't tell during their 7-game winless skid that they're different from right now, and they're on a 3-game winning streak, right? So that's a lot of credit to them. So let's give Corey Mace credit for that, because he was able to keep the ship running smoothly and in the right direction.
Yeah, and a lot of those games were close over that losing skid, and they do get some credit for
those.
That
Hurt the most, though, sometimes, don't they?
Yes, and I'm saying that no phase of the team, no position group lost the game repeatedly over that skid. So it wasn't like the offense was like, okay, defense, like we need to stop here. Week after week after week, or vice versa, where the offense wasn't scoring enough points to win. It was sort of a little thing here and there in each game, and that's not going to divide a locker room, and it certainly didn't. I feel like they were always hungry and ready to get back to work over that winless skid, and they never. I don't honestly think they ever lost belief. There was lots of outside noise, and I don't even think it's fair to compare this team to last year to say you can contrast the two teams, but I don't think you can compare them in terms of saying, is this a better team than last year? Well, obviously it is, and what went wrong last year? Why haven't you won post Labor Day? We talked about that a few weeks ago. I think it's a totally different team. They have that belief, and I still think they're going to make some noise in the playoffs. Obviously, there's a big game coming up this weekend against the BC Lions. That'll go a long way in determining where that playoff game will be.
Yeah, a win guarantees that it'll be at Mosaic Stadium if the Riders win, right? A loss throws it into a bit of a tizzy, and it's less likely because that all of a sudden gives BC the advantage. Don't forget a tie, which is a possibility. There have been 2 ties in the league. If the Rough Riders and the Lions tie, then BC has the tiebreaker, right? Because they won the first game of the series against Saskatchewan, so it would be 1-0-1 in BC's favor. So the Rough Riders do have to win. And they know that, and they've played well enough. The toughest team to predict in this league is the BC Lions. Mm-hmm. I haven't figured them out. Like Saskatchewan sliding for 7 games, that was unexplainable. We looked at it, but it just seemed to kind of go on and on. BC is all over the map. The Lions with their quarterback stuff. Rick Campbell is dedicated to having Nathan Rourke as his starting quarterback. He said that at a halftime interview that he's our guy. And despite the ups and downs, that's what they've stuck with. And I don't know what type of team they're going to send out here on Saturday. It's going to be interesting. They have my curiosity, and maybe it's a bit of a morbid streak in me because 8 weeks ago, we were saying they were the best team in the league, and now I don't know where they stand.
Yeah, when they signed Nathan Rourke, I thought they were going to be a better team than how they started the season. They were great to start the season with Vernon Adams Jr., who got hurt, but now it would be a question. I don't know if you would ever get an honest answer, but you could say, do you wish you would have just stuck with Vernon Adams Jr. and waited till next year to bring Nathan Rourke in? Obviously, Nathan wanted to come in and play, so it was kind of, your hands were kind of tied, but I feel like since Nathan Rourke came in, they're not a better team than how they started the season.
Yeah, they were better with Vernon Adams Jr. You make a good point, and it's something we may never know, but I'm pretty sure that Nathan Rourke said, listen, I will sign with you guys right now if I'm your starter. And Rick Campbell is abiding by that if that's what happened. It makes sense that that's what would happen. Otherwise, Rourke had all the leverage. He could say, listen, I'm going to go somewhere else. But if you make me your starter and commit to me, they can't get that really written down. But Rick Campbell seems to be devoted to it. It makes a lot of sense, and that's why they're going. And they realize that they're going to re-sign. And he said, and I'll stay afterwards, which he's their quarterback of the future. And it leaves Vernon Adams outside looking in, which – he realizes it's a business. That's how it goes. Rourke's a quarterback of the future, and he'll have a job somewhere. If I were guessing, it might be Saskatchewan for Vernon Adams, but I'm thinking more likely it's in Calgary.
Yeah, we talked about that a few weeks ago, the sort of quarterback market out there. And yeah, there's going to be a few quarterbacks and only a few spots. We'll see what Saskatchewan does. I mean, they could very well offer Trevor Harris another extension, right? And
the way he's playing, wouldn't you?
Exactly. Yeah. That's what I mean. And Bo Levi Mitchell and Hamilton, the way he's playing, how do you not bring him back next year? So what market needs a quarterback? Well, Calgary, obviously. There's going to be a lot of changes, I think, in Calgary based on how this season and sort of the past few seasons went. So maybe Vernon Adams ends up in Calgary, but then there's other quarterbacks out there that will need homes as well. So that'll be a lot of off-season discussion that we'll eventually get to. But just touching on Saturday's game again, yes, a home playoff game is on the line for Saskatchewan. Not realistically, but mathematically, they can still catch Winnipeg for first. So the West Final technically is on the line as well if Saskatchewan can run the table and win their last 2. And if the Bombers lose to the Argonauts on Friday and then the Alouettes 2 weeks later to wrap up, Saskatchewan could very well be hosting the West Final, which would be almost remarkable at this point. But
a bit of a
still
long shot,
on the table, right?
Yeah, it is. It is still there. It's a very slim shot, though, because Toronto wants the victory, right? So it's important. But the last game is going to be for Winnipeg is against Montreal, who's already clinched first place, basically. So are you going to rest a lot of your players? Probably. So maybe Winnipeg will too, though. But, because for Mike O'Shea, it's making sure they're healthy, and they're a bit of an older team. Though they've rebuilt that team pretty well. When you watching them on the weekend in that defense, there's a lot of unfamiliar names on that defense. So Winnipeg has done an amazing job of rebounding. Remember, everybody in Saskatchewan was laughing at the Bombers being 0-4 to start the season, and they just stayed the course. So no panicking. So when you talk about Coach of the Year candidates, Mike O'Shea is certainly up there, but so is Corey Mace. And they might be the 2 leading candidates. It's unfortunate they would go up against each other in the West, but I don't know if anybody's done a better job of righting their ships than Mike O'Shea and Corey Mace.
Yeah, I agree with that. And looking at the CFL playoff scenarios last week, it was so weird because to me, when you look at the standings, the Riders wanted BC and wanted Winnipeg to lose. Yet they needed both of them to win to clinch a playoff spot, but they probably wanted them to lose to increase their chances of a home playoff game. So BC and Winnipeg obviously both won, which then got Saskatchewan into the playoffs with their win. But the Riders, I think, at this point would have loved to not have clinched at this point in the season, because then they would have been, if they still would have beat Edmonton. So it was sort of a weird playoff scenario last week.
It's a weird scheduling of
for
the
them
CFL
to clinch,
sometimes, maybe. Yeah. And with 3 weeks left and a bunch of teams, 3 teams have buys, not this week, but the week after, right, including the Roughriders. So it's I give the schedule makers grief in this league all the time. And the way it works out, sometimes you can't change it because, as you said, there's some quirks that are unchangeable, and that was one of them. But the Roughriders, I don't know. Are you sitting there cheering for somebody, or do you just kind of watch the game? When I watch CFL games, I don't cheer for anybody. I just want to watch and enjoy the game. And I think the Roughriders are probably like that too. Whatever happens, happens. Our fate's in our own hand. You win the next game. And don't we hear that? That's their focus. All teams are saying that now throughout every sport. We just want to be 1-0. We just want to be 1-0. But I think the Roughriders have done a pretty good job of that and not looking too far ahead.
Yeah, and anytime you can realistically control your own destiny, they can't when it comes to first place, but they can when it comes to this home playoff game. So I think anytime you could hope that a team might lose to help you out, but until mathematically you need that, I don't really think you care as long as you handle your own business.
Who do you think is going to win? What's your prediction this weekend?
I don't know. It'll be a tie probably. Let's just hope for a tie, just so we can complicate things even further, and then maybe the Riders manage to beat Calgary in the last week of the season and clinch it that way for some more dramatic effect.
Oh boy, you're a sadist.
A tie with no command center over. Overriding it. So
anything without a command center in it, I'll go for that. I think the Roughriders are going to win it. I think they've gained the momentum back, and I think that they will not soundly beat the Lions, because they're not, as you pointed out, they're not soundly beating anybody. They're just barely beating people, but they're hanging on and putting a win together. They even got to use their victory formation for the second time this year, which is really rare for the Roughriders. But I think that they're on a roll now, and I predicted they'd win their first 4. I didn't predict the middle 7, but I think that they're going to win their last 5 too.
Yeah. It's almost CFL award voting season. So quickly before we end the podcast, let's kind of run through some of the nominees. I think we have already talked about the easiest one, which is the team's most outstanding player, Roland Milligan Jr. Roland Milligan Jr. Made his case. Even he notched his league leading 8th interception on the weekend, and made a case for him obviously to get that award for the Riders this season.
Rare for a defensive player to win that, though, right? And in the history of the CFL of those awards, only one defensive player has won the Outstanding Player Award throughout the whole league, and that's Solomon Elimimian, who set a record for tackles. Yes, Roland Milligan is the Roughriders' top player, offense or defense. Trevor Harris has played well, but he's missed 6 games in the middle, so he's always the first person you look at as the quarterback. But Roland Milligan just keeps playing great. So obviously, if he's the outstanding player, which I believe he is, he's also the outstanding defensive player for the Roughriders. And you could even think about him, because he's leading the league in special teams tackles. He could be the team's special teams representative, which is absolutely unheard of.
I guess the other option would be Adam Korsak, the punter. I don't really know. A.J. Allen is up there in special teams tackles, and Mario Alford has had an okay year, but who do you think is the special teams leader then?
I think I'd vote for Milligan. The fact that he's doing all 3. Alford once in a while makes big plays, but have you noticed how easily he's running out of bounds now? He's just doesn't seem to be turning himself. Yes, he really does now. And I think, I realize he's still capable on occasion, but it doesn't seem like he's willing to I should never criticize anybody for avoiding hits in football, but it just doesn't seem like he's got that oomph factor anymore that he used to have. So yeah, I think that Roland Milligan could win all 3 categories, and legitimately, and that would really fortify his case to be a contender for outstanding player when the league-wide vote comes up.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, offensive lineman, I don't think there's any question when it comes to Logan Furland and how valuable he's been. We've discussed him before. Yeah. The rookie award, there was the CFL released the list last week. The 2 names to me that were at the top, obviously Trevor Reed. I think he's my vote. I'm going to say for for the award. But Joe, I just don't think the sample size is big enough. But he would be the guy that you could sort of make a case because he's more the flashy playmaker on the other side. But I think Trevor Reid's the easiest choice here.
Yeah, Joe didn't start the season right away. It took him a while to work his way into the lineup, made a couple of big plays, and then got hurt, and that's unfortunate. But when you think of what Trevor Reid has done on the left side, the blind side, because when Trevor Harris is throwing the football, he's got to turn the one way, so the blind side is the back side, and that's where Trevor Reid, has done an amazing job. I think he's given up one sack according to their statistics. So to be a rookie in that league, and how long have the Rough Riders been looking for a left tackle? They found one who's played every game, which is even more amazing on this line, and he's done an excellent job. What an athlete. Ariel Zur from the Riders told me to look up. He does backflips. That's how athletic this guy is. Yep. And watching him and his footwork, a very good player, very solid. Haven't had to worry about that position all season. He's certainly a Rookie of the Year candidate. For the Rough Riders, certainly the winner and could win the West.
Yep. And one of the maybe votes that won't be unanimous or might not be unanimous would be the Canadian, because there's a couple of players that I think will get votes this year. Sam Emelis, if he closes in on 1,000, I think he's 30
he's
or 40
almost
yards
there,
away.
right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then how do you not look at Logan Ferland and what he's done? So I think both might get votes this year.
It's so tough getting offensive linemen. They used to, I think I've told you, they used to originally the Shenley Award was for outstanding linemen, and it was always one. It was the offensive and the defensive linemen were coupled in the same category. So the defensive lineman would always win that. So they said, we got to recognize the offensive lineman. So they made their own category for it. So they all think that that's where the offensive linemen are recognized. And that's good. We do recognize outstanding play for him. But it's still tough to put an offensive lineman up against any position player with any type of statistics, because, well, you could say that they're gaining the yardage, they're not sacking quarterbacks, and that's what the offensive line is doing. So, but watching Logan Ferland, you and I and all the fans and the media and his teammates in particular have seen what a great job he's done. But to get a vote for that position, to be the outstanding Canadian, is rare. You might win a team award, but you'll never, are you going to beat a Brady Oliveira? Are you going to beat anybody else? Justin McInnes, some of these Canadians throughout the league, probably not. Let's just appreciate the season and the contributions from Logan Ferland, and he could win outstanding offensive lineman across the league because of what he's done. I know there's some really good ones, and the tackles get looked at because of the position they play, but he's certainly a contender for offensive lineman, but I can't imagine him winning outstanding Canadian.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see. I guess that'll do it for episode 153, Darrell. Enjoy the game this weekend, and thanks as always for joining.
We'll see you at practice.